All right, so I'm here to talk to you about the power in we. So how I came across this is, I started music when I was 4 years old. When you're 4 years old, you don't really have a say in what you do. I wasn't thinking, wow, I want to pick up the violin. It's the first thing I want to do when I'm 4 years old, right? And over time, I realized that music is a way we express ourselves. Everybody has their own tastes. It defines our culture. It defines our society. It puts us together. Music causes revolutions. It's also our individual identities, right? It defines us. It's our pride and joy. We all have different tastes, and music is the power in me. So let's remember that. Music is the power in me. We'll save that for later. So let's talk classical music now. Mozart, Brahms, Beethoven, Haydn, all these famous classical composers you've heard of. They developed music over the Baroque, classical, and Romantic eras. There's famous violin concertos you've probably never heard of, like the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto in E minor. And just, like Mozart, I started at a young age, but I was no prodigy when I was 4 years old. I picked up the violin. It was a box. It had no strings on it. It was a little stick I used as a bow. I couldn't hold it, so I held the bow like this. I would always get corrected, and you try to correct a young kid, and they just go back to their bad habits. And but I had to start somewhere too, and it was at the very bottom. Mozart wrote his first opera when he was 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, my mom was dragging me to the practice room. And so I started violin when I was 4, but I had some struggles along the way. It wasn't my true passion. I couldn't call it my passion. It almost seemed like it was my parents' passion. Why were they making me do this? Why were they making me start this music? It's a discipline, right? It's something that you have to work at. You have to put time, and you have to keep the consistency. My 4-year-old mind couldn't wrap my head around that. So I played up till about 6th, 7th grade, and I decided I'm going to quit. And actually, my mom had me quit because, I just wasn't putting in the time needed for it. I wasn't progressing. Music costs a lot of money. Every lesson, it's like $40, $50. You go, and it's a lot of time commitment, too. All those orchestras you're in, school orchestra, outside, there's a Toledo Symphony Youth Orchestra, there's an International Youth Orchestra, there's Sylvania Community Orchestra, you just got to be involved in everything. And so I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. So I took a step back, and I think I took about a year break. But over that year, I was excelling in school, I was doing everything I needed to do, I was, hanging out with friends, I obviously had more time, but I felt an emptiness, and I think that emptiness is what drove me back into music. And when I really, really got back into it and found a teacher, that worked with me and motivated me, I think that's when I made the most progress. It's not those 8 years in the beginning when I was young that I made the progress. It's the majority of the progress I made was, when I started up and I said, hey, I want to do this again. 7th grade, 8th grade, probably up till freshman year. Every now and then I get lazy. We all say, oh, we're going to practice 5 hours every day. We're going to pull out, 5 Paganini Caprices by next semester. We're going to progress. We're going to keep moving. But we all have these, obstacles that get in our way. Oh, I'm too busy. I have this. I'm in NHS and I have to volunteer. I have this school project due, right? But when I really look back at music, it's not necessarily the auditions I've done, all the performances I've had. I've had massive opportunities through my, teachers. They got me to places like Carnegie Hall to, perform with a national orchestra, playing solos with like Toledo Symphony, standing on that stage. It's not those memories that I think are most memorable to me. I think it's the connections that I've made through music, the people that you meet, the music that you create, because music, in a way, is another language. It's an expressive language. It's an art. So these people behind me, I knew some of them when I was younger, but, for an example, Miranda, my friend here, I knew of her. She's a grade above me. I just knew of her. To be honest, I really didn't even know what grade she was in. Last year I asked her if she was a freshman, and she was like, it's kind of awkward. But out of nowhere, I went up to her. I was just like, hey, I stayed up till 4 a.m. arranging this piece, because, there's a new piece bopping on the radio. It was Despacito. And I was like, hey, I just wrote this. It took me like 8 hours, but I grinded it out. Hey, you want to play? And she was like, Yeah, sure. And I got this quartet together, and I was like, I wasn't really thinking about it. You know, if you look at this, it's not a standard quartet. It's 2 violins, a cello, and a bass. It's usually the standard quartet is 2 violins, viola, and cello. And you know what I was thinking of is music is so limited now. Everybody feels like it has to be a certain way. We're taught that it has to be a certain way. You have to sit in a quartet in a certain arrangement. Someone has to sit here. All the violins have to play, you know, the melodies, and the second violins are buried under and no one hears them. You know, and then we don't even know violas exist. Like, there's just so many things that, you know, we have so many regulations when we play music. And I feel like that draws away the freedom and the expression from music. And that's why kids turn and say, you know, I don't want to do this anymore. Because music isn't what it used to be back then. You know, when Mozart was a kid, he never thought, you know, I want to move to Vienna and I'm going to be a famous composer and I'm going to write symphonies. And he never did that. He just sat on his little piano and said, you know, I have an idea. Let me express something. So I want to take a moment to share this experience with you. This is Despacito. This is not the Justin Bieber version. This is the original Spanish version, but without lyrics, and it's going to be a weird string quartet. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for that. I'm going to set my violin down. You want to take it? As you can see, I went a little too hard on my bow. It's hard when you get in the moment, you know? You just keep going. And I feel like that's what music should be. So at this point, we've probably realized that it's not a Mozart string quartet. And so why did I choose this piece instead? You know, it's all about speaking to your audience. Music changes over time, right? Of course, there's value in classical music, because without classical music, I wouldn't have been able to like arrange that or play anything like that. All the skills I've utilized in there. You know, it's weird because some of this music I wrote, it has the basic notes on there, but I told them, hey, ad-lib, whatever you want to improv in there, just add it in. Little trills, little extra notes. That's the freedom that music gives us. And those are the kind of things that I feel like, you know, when we need a breath away from all this stress and extra work that we have to do, this is the type of music we can play and, you know, and we can affect others in doing it. So how did I come to arrange this piece? Or how did I even come to arranging? You know, I don't know, I was just sitting down one day and I was thinking, you know, all this music that's pre-written, you know, why is it already there? Someone had to have a vision, someone had to have a passion to write that. Right now we're treating those pieces like, you know, it's an exercise book. We have to grind them out by a certain date. We got to perform it at a certain recital in front of, what, a jury, your private teacher? It shouldn't be like that. That's not what music was back then. You know, they all wrote these pieces because they were putting and pouring their hearts into it. You know, just because this music is a little, you know, it breaks a couple of rules, it doesn't mean that this is any less of music than what's already written. So, you know, music is developing now, and a lot of it, you know, it's becoming electronic music, and everybody's saying, you know, this isn't music anymore. What is this? This is just, you know, I hear my dad say that all the time. You know, I'll turn on like 94.9, and some rap piece will come on, and he'll be like, "This is not music." You know, back then we had rock bands, and we had, you know, cool stuff. You know, Guns N' Roses, and you know, music changes. And for me, it's kind of weird because I get in the car and, you know, I drive out of my high school sometimes, you know, because in the middle of the day I have to go to the college, and sometimes I see flex students, so they leave early in the middle of the day, and they have their windows all the way down, just blasting some like, what, G-Eazy, you know, or something like that. And I'm over here like blasting some like, you know, Korean folk tune out of my car at like volume 30. And, you know, they just look over at me like, what are you doing? And, you know, music is about how, you know, it's not necessarily the lyrics, it's what you hear. How does it make you feel? You know, what kind of thoughts come into your head when you hear music? Music is cool because you hear it, but it helps you visualize if you want to. You just got to put your mind to it, right? You know, humans are responsive, you know, creatures, right? We respond off of, you know, what people do. So if someone is hurting, we go and comfort them, right? And if someone laughs or a big crowd laughs, we all laugh together. You know, we're gravitated towards, you know, strong, powerful emotions, but even with all the support and by human nature, we're supposed to be helping each other out and we're supposed to be, you know, making groups, there's still so much sadness and help that is needed in the world right now. And, you know, I thought back and I was like, you know, so what can 16-year-old me at the time do that can really impact the people around me? You know, obviously I can't go out in some lab and get Nobel's Peace Prize like out of nowhere, you know, that it just doesn't happen that way. You know, all my goals were, you know, up there. And it's good to have goals that are up there, reach for, you know, the stars, right? But I feel like if we only reach for the stars, we miss the other opportunities that are around us that add up. You know, for an example, I started volunteering at the local nursing home, but it wasn't, you know, like washing dishes or anything. It was, I would take my violin and a group of friends, and we go there and we just grind out pieces for them. And obviously we can't go there and play like heavy metal or anything. We'd play like, you know, Oh Danny Boy or something like that. And the way that these people reacted it was I think that's what hit me. A grandmother came up to me, and she had graduated from Stanford, and her daughter went to Juilliard for violin performance. And she said, if I asked my daughter to come here and play, she'd call me crazy because it's not a good enough venue for her. And I think that's the saddest thing. When we can get out there and make these little differences with, just simple music or anything. It doesn't even have to be music. If you're into chemistry, go out to a local library, go out to a local high school or an elementary, do demos for them. I remember through UT, we have a group called ACS, and we go out, and we'd literally go out, blow methane bubbles, and light kids' hands on fire, and they'd be like, whoa, what's going on? But that caught their attention, and they pay attention after that. And then we teach them, the real stuff. Just stuff like that all of us are capable of doing. And I feel that, there's 4 steps that I feel like I've come up with for myself that I always stay true to, and it's a cycle. And I feel like this is a cycle that's always been passed down through generations, especially through my family. 1 is better yourself. Unless you can make something of yourself first, people won't notice. When people call some people show-offs and, you're just doing this for attention, it's because if your reason is for the power in me, that's not, you're not doing it right. You shouldn't need to grab people's attention. If you do something right, people will notice, naturally. Number 2 is know your audience. Choose your niche, right? And then reach out. Even if it's the smallest thing, it can make a difference if that small thing happens once, then twice, and 3 times, and it adds up. So 3 sub-steps in those steps are, you got to prepare, you got to execute, but the most important is consistency. My bad. You have to stay consistent, or it doesn't matter. You can do something once because someone told you to, but if you really love it, you'll go out there and do it because it's what you want to do. It's what you have a drive for. It's what you have a passion for. And then the most important probably is be thankful. There are people that got you to where you are, right? You didn't just better yourself by yourself. You didn't go in a practice room and just, for me, I didn't grind out pieces and all of a sudden I was like, oh, wow, I'm going to do this and this and this, and I'm going to go volunteer here. My parents had to fund me. I had to have the teachers that supported me. And it's a cycle because they're doing their part. Because once you appreciate, you'll do your part. Because without knowing, you motivate other people. People watch you. I'm only 17 right now. I go out and play something for the elderly, and there happens to be a little kid there. They'll look at that and be like, wow, maybe I want to do that when I'm older. What can I do? So there's a condition that I always keep myself to, and I have to stay true to this before I even touch that cycle. You need to excel in kindness. That's how you stay true to yourself. You excel in kindness. And that's how you grow a community, because once you start doing something and people notice it and they get affected by it and they start getting motivated by it, this community grows. The community grows around you because I said again, people are gravitated towards strong emotions. Communities stay together because they have a common interest. They're all in different grades. I'm not in any of their grades. I barely see them during the school day. He's a freshman. They're seniors. You don't run into people like that, but you can bond over a common ground of kindness. And our common ground that we had a passion for was music, right? I think the most memorable experience from high school for me will be sitting in the Sylvania Community Orchestra 2 years ago, and I had a stand partner, and she would refuse to share her stand. You're supposed to be two to a stand. She'd be like, no, it was a really elderly woman. She's like, I don't want to share stands with you. I can't see this. 2 weeks later, I found out she was 93 years old, and she could barely move her arm for the bow. And she was still sitting there voluntarily, playing in an orchestra. That motivates me. And I think that's what really motivated me and keeps me going. Because her at that age, I feel like I would just be, laying in my bed watching TV or something. Like, I wouldn't want to be sitting in an orchestra watching a conductor. And, it hurts a lot. My traps are actually, like, different sizes because I've been playing violin for so long. Like, this one is, like, twice the size of this one. I'm not even joking. If you ask me later, I'll show you. And it's just motivating. Like, these kinds of things, these little things that, these little things that do things for us. But yeah, so to sum this up, I think, motivation is drive and passion, but I realize that it's the power in we that drives the power in me. It can't go backwards, it has to go that way. So, and everybody's unique, so you need to go out there and make your mark your own way. So I want to challenge everybody. Take that cycle, and I want to see everybody excel in kindness. I hope that you can all share your motivations and passions through the power in me. Thank you.